Hi, friends. Welcome to Manitowoc Cooperative Ministry Daily Devotions. I'm Pastor Judine Duerwaechter, co-pastor with the MCM, and I'm bringing you today a daily devotion on Psalm 79 here in our offices at Peace United Church of Christ in Manitowoc. I'm going to read to you just the first few verses of Psalm 79. I'm going to really invite you to take a look at it yourself. It is very poetically written, actually very beautifully poetically written. However, it's very, very dramatic, which may pique your interest just a little bit. But let me give you the first 5 verses and we'll see how this might be applicable for us today. So Psalm 79. Oh God, the nations have come into your inheritance. They've defiled your holy temple. They've laid Jerusalem in ruins. They've given the bodies of your servants to the birds of the air for food, the flesh of your faithful to the wild animals of the earth. They've poured out their blood like water all over Jerusalem, and there was no one to bury them. We've become a taunt to our neighbors, mocked and derided by those around us. How long, O Lord, will you be angry forever? So just as I'm reading those few verses for you, I am thinking about what's going on in our country right now. Currently, we remain in a pandemic, and we've recently had, of course, Black Lives Matter come to the forefront, given the innocent death of a Black man, and not just one, but more than one, by the hands of law. And I think about the rioting that has taken place because of that, and the looting, and persons just going crazy, and people are dying and being left in the streets, so to speak. So this psalm comes, of course, from ancient times, and it's the outline of the psalm is that Jerusalem, the city of Jerusalem, is in a place of destruction and demoralization because all of their political and religious order has gone into total chaos. And we remember why this is so significant, and it can be for us too today, and that is that religion for the ancient times, that was a safety net. That was their group's security. So the psalm reveals this particular time. The Israelites are in a state of demise and total spiritual insecurity. And it's a really scary time. The psalmist goes on to say that basically Israel's inheritance of being, the chosen ones by God, that's all fallen into the hands of the heathens. And with that, for them to be remaining as God's chosen people, that looks very, very dim at this time. And ultimately, that's going to be a loss for God, for God's self. And even the shame that is surrounding this destruction and demoralization in Psalm 79, that is going to be on God now, too. So the psalmist tells God, I think you're angry at the wrong people, because, of course, that they believed that when things went bad, it was because God was punishing them or that God was angry. So what the psalmist is saying is, don't look at us, but we're the ones who are suffering, but look at them, look at the heathens. They're the ones that, really should be in a place of disaster and dying, not us. So the psalmist pleads with God for compassion of his own people, and asks God to, please forgive our sins. And because this is in fact so bad, to forgive the sins of the Israelites' forefathers as well, just thinking that their sins are contributing to the fact that God is angry here. And in the midst of all this destruction and pleading, unfortunately, God is still silent. And the psalmist is getting more and more anxious and more scared. Nothing is happening. So then he goes on and begins to say to God, hey, this is really getting out of hand. think of our current situation in the 21st century too. You know, how many of us were watching the televisions while the rioting was going on? Hey, this is getting really out of hand. Well, the psalmist is saying the same thing. This is actually getting embarrassing, you know, for us. People are starting to talk like, yeah, where's your God, you know, in the midst of all of this. And because the psalmist is experiencing God's silence, the psalmist unfortunately takes a little bit of a low road in his response and asks God to now avenge the blood of those who have died in the streets. And not only avenge his people's blood, to avenge it times 7, which is a very common expression in the Bible, avenge it times 7, so there can be some redemption here. Again, the psalmist believes you've got the wrong people who are basically suffering, you know, hear the cries of those who have been imprisoned, you know, and again, there's this silence. And the psalmist says, once you do all this for us, avenge the enemies times 7, and then we will give you thanks and praise. So there's a little bit, in my opinion, of a quid pro quo there. You do this, and we'll do this then. So the psalmist is pleading so desperately for God's intervention, and again, the punishment on the enemies for having slaughtered the Israelites, religious leaders, their saints. I would equate that to rioting, you know, back in the 60s with the death, of course, of Martin Luther King Jr. And again, the psalmist saying this needs to be avenged, and to say it in an absolute pleading way. There's no dignity here in how our religious leaders and our saints have died. Their bodies are laying rotten in the streets, and the birds of the air and the animals are coming to feed on them. So what do you do in the midst of this? What do we do, friends, when really it seems hopeless? What do you do? God is silent. You can't seem to recognize that there's a divine solution at work here. What do you do? I feel that this psalm calls us to recognize that even in a place of absolute, complete desperation and difficulty, that we are called to take the high road. I remember Michelle Obama saying, when they go low toward us, we go high, meaning back in response to. And I think that's really within the message of Psalm 79. The psalmist takes the low road. He starts, you know, I envision him yelling at God, you know, to punish those who are hurting them. And we understand in the salvation of the Christian scriptures that there's a universal compassion that we ask of God, that when God gives compassion to us, God gives compassion to all. So it is a real spiritual integrity that I feel this psalm calls all of us to, and that God's self is in the integrity of the process. So if all seems hopeless, friends, and you feel there truly is nothing left that you can do, you can bring a sense of spiritual integrity, literally, to your hopelessness. I think it's a powerful message, and I hope it's true for you today. I hope you've enjoyed visiting with me regarding Psalm 79. And again, I invite you to go and take a look at it. So join me next time, and we'll take a look at Psalm 80. Have a blessed day, and remember to live to love. Bye now.